He survived a record-breaking 179.8 G crash and just casually defied the laws of physics. But that's not what made David Purley truly legendary. Today we are diving into the story and mindset of a man who represented everything that classic Formula One was back in the day: raw, human, and dangerous. But who was David Purley, and what happened at Zandvoort in 1973? And why is his story still relevant today, in the era of carbon fiber, and oh my god, I'm an F1 driver, and my back sometimes does hurt? Well, let's see. Hi everyone, welcome. If you are interested in Formula One and not just tire strategies, DRS zones, and really dumb penalties, but danger, drama, and the incredible mindset these drivers have, then you must know about David Purley. He didn't win world championships, and he was never a household name, but what he did still gives people goosebumps, even 50 years later. Before Formula One, Purley was already living 10 lives at once: Army paratrooper, certified deep-sea driver, and stunt pilot. He once survived a parachute drop by literally grabbing onto his officer's parachute and holding onto it for 90 seconds. That kind of a guy. He didn't care much for podiums. He found adrenaline in racing. And yes, his family had money. They actually owned a refrigeration company. Yes. But instead of chilling, he went straight into motorsport. Zandvoort, 1973, the moment that defined him. The 1973 Dutch Grand Prix, Lap 8. Roger Williamson's car flips and catches fire. Everyone drives past, except David. He stops, jumps out, runs into the flames. He tries to flip the car. He grabs a fire extinguisher. Marshals don't help. They thought he was trying to put out his own car, all while the race keeps going. "For God's sake, David, get me out of here," Williamson's last words reportedly. That haunted Purley for years. The race was uninterrupted, and Purley's rescue attempts were observed by many around the track and on TV. There was a fire truck parked a few hundred meters from the scene, which could not have been moved any closer as the race was still going on. Ultimately, spectators decided to try to get over the barriers and give the two drivers a hand. However, security held them back, while all the other drivers kept on competing for points and podiums. Sir Jackie Stewart and Lewis Hamilton aren't the only drivers decorated for their contributions to F1 safety. David Purley received the George Medal. 1977, the G-force record. Is Romain Grosjean's harrowing 67G Fireball crash at the Bahrain Grand Prix etched on your retina? Well, you're not alone with that. But listen to this. After 1973, David Purley became really famous, but wasn't that successful on track. In the later part of that season, he failed to qualify for the Italian Grand Prix, and in 1974 for his home race in Silverstone. So he started racing F2, and he won the championship in Formula 5000 during his years away from Formula One. Eventually, he managed to get back into the golden category in 1977. However, during his first practice session in Silverstone, an electric failure turned Purley's weekend into a real nightmare. The problem seemed to have been quickly resolved, and the fire extinguished. However, due to the team's financial struggles, they did not have enough mechanics. They could not prepare the spare car for deployment. Therefore, David had to keep on using the very same car he had previously had that fiery accident with. Unfortunately, the leftover dust and some spilled fuel cemented inside the vehicle's engine. The throttle of the car had stuck wide open at Beckett's and Purley, ran directly into the barrier.
Can you remember what happened?
I can remember most of it, yeah. I remember going into the corner at about 145 into Beckett's and going hard onto the brakes and nothing happening. And I thought at the time that the brakes had gone, but in fact what it was that the throttles were jammed wide open and the car, 500 brake horsepower pushing me on, just went straight through about 3 layers of catch fencing and hit the barrier with an almighty thump.
In this record-breaking accident, Purley's car decelerated from 173 kilometers per hour to a standstill in less than 66 centimeters, which equals to 179.8 G-force effect. This held the Guinness record for the biggest impact survived by anyone until 2003, when IndyCar driver Kenny Brack survived a collision with a jaw-dropping 214 G. Years after the accident, Purley said,
Well, I'm told I had 29 bone fractures and a couple of dislocations. My heart stopped 6 times, and I'm quite lucky to be here, actually.
Interesting enough, after being resuscitated for the nth time, he regained his consciousness. As Mike Earl, his team boss at the time, stood next to his stretcher, they immediately started arguing about the cause of the accident. Earl later stated that he kept on going that argument in order to help his driver and distract him from the pain he had to endure. Although both the team and the doctors were certain that the Brit couldn't race the next day, Earl promised his driver to have his car ready for him. In fact, doctors on scene doubted whether Purley would survive that 30-kilometer journey to the nearest hospital. Recovery against all odds. What do you do after surviving the most brutal crash in Formula One history? Well, for David Purley, the answer was simple. You fight your way back. The crash shattered his body. His left leg came out an inch shorter than his right. Walking was a challenge. Racing seemed impossible. But well, Purley didn't get that memo. And impossible wasn't in his vocabulary. He found a Belgian surgeon willing to attempt something radical, to say the least. An untested, high-risk bone lengthening procedure. You heard that right. The doctor rebroke Purley's leg, stretched it millimeter by millimeter, and grafted it into place. The procedure had only ever been done on children. For an adult, it could have meant paralysis. Purley lived in agony for months. There were no guarantees. And he didn't only want to walk, he wanted to race again. And in 1979, against all odds, that's what he did. His ankles never fully healed. He couldn't run again, but he drove. So how did Purley bounce back from all this? Well, let's connect this to what we know from sports psychology. According to Gallian-Villi's resilience model, negative experiences, in sports this can be athletic burnout, transfer from one club to the other, decreased performance, or a serious injury, can actually build resilience when an athlete is supported by strong personal and social resources. And Purley had both. He had a stubborn determination and also the support of his family and team. His story also aligns with the metacognition model, which is, in a nutshell, the ability to reflect on one's own thoughts and feelings in a way that makes future performance more adaptive. Let's just translate that. So Purley knew the risks, evaluated his motivation, and saw his recovery process as part of a bigger picture rather than an end. And resilience isn't just for athletes, isn't just for racing drivers. It's a skill, it's a process that we can all develop over time by strengthening a couple key factors. Believing in our ability to overcome, being positive, optimistic, even if it's difficult, seeing a setback as temporary, social support, having people who believe in us, family members, friends, colleagues, having a strong sense of purpose and motivation. We should always know why we are getting back up. David Purley wasn't just a driver, he was a fighter. And I think his example shows us that adversity doesn't necessarily have to break you. it can forge something even stronger. And what happened next? In 1979, Purley reached his ultimate goal. He was racing again. He was racing in the British Formula One series, Aurora, and miraculously he was clocking faster lap times at Goodwood than he had before his crash. Since he did not manage to find future investors and sponsors, he had to switch to other sports. Let's face it, it always boils down to money. First, he took part in enduro motorcycle races, and then he decided to dedicate his time to aerobatics. On July 2nd, Purley suffered a fatal aircraft crash during a practice session near his hometown. One of the greatest, almost forgotten F1 heroes died at the age of 40 and was survived by his fiancée Gail and their baby girl Claudia. Following the accident, 1976 F1 World Champion James Hunt said, "I think at one point you may run out of luck. He has definitely used all his 9 lives." Purley never stood on the top step, but he did stop when no one else did. And he kept on fighting when most people would have given up. And if you are interested in learning more about exciting stories filled with grit, heartbreak, and the real raw drama behind Formula One, then click on the next video. Did you know that there's a driver who gave up racing on the day his friend died on track? Or did you know that there's another driver who got imprisoned and thought he would never race again? Or there's another driver who helped his rival win the title? Well, there's a lot worth remembering here.